The moment Grace felt the grip close around her wrist, too tight, too possessive, too familiar, she knew her carefully built new life was about to shatter. The upscale Manhattan steakhouse blurred around her. Panic clawed at her chest as Marcus pulled her closer, his cologne bringing back memories of bruises she'd hidden under long sleeves. His other hand reached for her face. Then everything stopped. A hand, stronger and steadier, closed around Marcus's wrist with lethal precision. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Grace looked up to find storm-gray eyes fixed on her ex-boyfriend with an intensity that made her shiver for entirely different reasons. "She seems unwilling," a voice said, low and dangerous, with the faintest trace of an Italian accent. "Remove your hand. Now." Marcus's grip loosened immediately. The man who'd spoken hadn't raised his voice, but every person in the vicinity had frozen, including Marcus. The air itself felt heavy with unspoken threat. "Who the hell?" Marcus started. "Leave. One word. Absolute command. No negotiation. No second chances." Marcus's face went pale. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over his own feet, and practically ran for the exit. Just like that. The man who'd terrorized Grace for 2 years, who'd made her flee across the country, who'd tracked her down after 6 months of freedom, gone in seconds. Grace stared at her savior, her heart hammering for entirely different reasons now. He was devastatingly handsome, sharp jawline, dark hair perfectly styled, a tailored black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Intelligent, dangerous, burning with something she couldn't name. Something that made her feel simultaneously safer and more terrified than she'd ever been. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer now as those gray eyes found hers. Grace nodded, unable to speak, unable to look away. "Good," he murmured, stepping closer. His thumb brushed across the red mark on her wrist where Marcus had grabbed her, and electricity shot through her entire body. The gentleness of his touch was devastating after the violence she'd just escaped. He leaned in, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive, dark, intoxicating, and when he spoke, his words were barely above a whisper, meant only for her. "You're mine now, Bella. Nothing like that will happen again." If you want to discover how this moment changed everything for Grace, how a simple act of protection turned into something neither of them expected, something dangerous and consuming and impossible to resist, then stay with me. Because this story, it's just beginning. 3 hours earlier, Grace had been focused on one thing, surviving her double shift at Valentino's, the most exclusive steakhouse in Manhattan. Her feet ached in the cheap black flats she'd worn for the 4th day in a row because she couldn't afford new ones yet. Not with rent due in 5 days and still being $300 short. She balanced 4 plates with practiced ease, weaving between tables filled with people who'd never worried about making rent in their lives. Diamond cufflinks caught the candlelight. Designer dresses that cost more than her monthly salary. This was a different world, one she served but would never belong to. She'd accepted that. Hell, she'd made peace with it. Being invisible was safer anyway. "Table 12 needs attention," James, the head waiter, called out as she passed. "And don't mess it up. That's Alessandro Valentino's table." Grace's steps faltered. She'd heard that name whispered with a mixture of fear and reverence ever since starting this job. The Valentino family owned half of New York, or so the rumor said. Restaurants, real estate, import businesses. And underneath it all, everyone knew the truth nobody spoke aloud: the Valentinos were connected. Organized crime. Powerful. Untouchable. Dangerous. "Just serve the wine and don't make eye contact," James added, his voice carrying a warning. "Men like that? They notice everything." Grace grabbed the bottle, a Brunello di Montalcino that cost more than she made in a week, and approached table 12 with her heart in her throat. 4 men sat around the table, but she only saw one. Alessandro Valentino commanded attention without trying. He sat at the head, his posture relaxed but radiating authority. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved by Michelangelo himself, strong jaw, straight nose, lips that looked soft despite the hard edge to everything else about him. His suit jacket hung on the chair behind him, his white dress shirt rolled up to reveal forearms that made her mouth go dry. Tan skin. The edge of a tattoo disappearing beneath the fabric. When she approached, conversation at the table died. "Your wine, sir," Grace said quietly, keeping her eyes down as she poured. Her hands were steady despite her racing heart. Years of practice hiding fear. "Look at me." The command was soft but undeniable. Grace's pulse jumped. Slowly, she raised her eyes to meet his. Storm gray. His eyes were the color of a storm rolling in over the ocean, and just as impossible to look away from. They held her captive with an intensity that made breathing difficult. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice smooth as the wine she was pouring. "Grace, sir." Something flickered in those gray depths. Interest. Recognition of something. "Grace," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. "You're new here." 4 months, sir." "You don't need to call me sir." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Alessandro is fine." One of the other men at the table chuckled, but Alessandro didn't break eye contact. The weight of his attention was almost physical. Grace felt heat creep up her neck. This was dangerous. Men like him were always dangerous, especially for girls like her, broke, running, desperate. "Is there anything else I can get you?" she managed. "Not right now, Bella." His eyes lingered on her face a moment longer. "But I'll find you when there is." It sounded like a promise. Like a threat. Like both. Grace nodded and retreated as gracefully as she could, feeling his eyes on her back the entire way. Her hands were shaking when she reached the kitchen. She pressed them flat against the cool metal prep counter and tried to steady her breathing. "Did he say anything to you?" James appeared at her elbow, looking worried. "Just ask my name." James's expression darkened. "Be careful, Grace. Alessandro Valentino isn't the kind of man who asks questions without reason. If he's interested in you." He trailed off, but the warning was clear. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Grace felt Alessandro's gaze on her throughout the night, a constant weight that made her hyper-aware of every movement. Twice more she had to return to his table, and each time he found a reason to speak to her. Small things: did she like working here? How long had she lived in New York? Had she always wanted to be a server? His voice was cultured, educated, but with an edge that suggested violence lurked just beneath the surface. She should have been terrified. Instead, her pulse raced every time he looked at her. Her body responding to danger in ways it shouldn't. It was near closing time when Marcus walked in. Grace's blood turned to ice. She hadn't seen him in 6 months, not since the night she'd finally gathered the courage to leave, throwing clothes into a bag while he slept off another drunk. She'd driven across the country. Changed her number. Dyed her hair. She'd done everything right. But here he was. Jaw set. Eyes scanning the restaurant until they landed on her. "Grace." His voice carried across the dining room. Several patrons looked up. "We need to talk. Now." Her manager, Giuseppe, hurried over. "Sir, I'm afraid, I'm talking to my girlfriend," Marcus snapped, starting toward her. "This is none of your business." "Ex-girlfriend," Grace said, forcing steel into her voice despite the panic clawing at her insides. The familiar fear was back, cold and sharp. "Marcus, you need to leave. Don't tell me what to do." He was close now. Too close. She could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You can't just walk away from what we had. From what you owe me." Grace backed up until she hit the wall near the kitchen entrance. Marcus followed, his hand shooting out to grab her wrist. His grip was punishing, familiar in the worst way. She'd worn bracelets for months to hide the bruises he left. Had gotten so good at lying about them that the lies became automatic. "Let go," she whispered, hating how small her voice sounded. "We're not done." Then Alessandro was there. Grace hadn't even seen him move, but suddenly he stood between her and Marcus, one hand wrapped around Marcus's wrist with enough pressure to make the other man gasp in pain. Up close, Alessandro was even more imposing, taller, broader, radiating controlled violence that made Marcus look like exactly what he was, a cowardly bully. "She seems unwilling," Alessandro said, his voice deadly calm. Each word precise, measured, carrying more threat than Marcus's entire tantrum. "Remove your hand. Now." Marcus tried to pull away, but Alessandro's grip was iron. "This is none of your business, man. She's nothing to you." Alessandro's voice dropped even lower, more dangerous. "Leave. Or I'll remove you myself. And trust me." A pause, heavy with promise. "You don't want that." For a moment, Grace thought Marcus might actually be stupid enough to fight. His face flushed red, jaw clenching. But then something in Alessandro's eyes made him hesitate. Some recognition of predator versus prey. Some primal understanding that he was outmatched in every possible way. Marcus wrenched his hand free and stumbled backward, nearly falling over a chair. "This isn't over, Grace. You hear me? This isn't." "Yes, it is." Alessandro didn't raise his voice. "Didn't need to. If I see you near her again, if you even think about her, you will disappear. Capisci?" The Italian word hung in the air like a curse. Marcus's face went pale. He backed away, turned, and practically ran for the exit. Silence fell over the restaurant. Grace became aware of everyone staring. Her wrist throbbed where Marcus had grabbed it, already turning red. The panic was still there, making her hands shake, making breathing difficult. Then Alessandro's hand cupped her elbow, gentle despite the violence she'd just witnessed him capable of. "Are you all right?" His eyes searched her face with an intensity that stole her breath. Yes. Thank you." His jaw tightened as he looked at the mark on her wrist. His thumb brushed over it with surprising tenderness, and Grace shivered at the contact. At how different his touch felt from Marcus's. Protective instead of possessive. Comforting instead of controlling. Has he done this before? The question was quiet, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. She didn't answer, but he must have read it in her expression. Something dark and dangerous flickered across his face. "Come," he said softly. "You're done for tonight. I can't just leave. I need this job, Giuseppe." Alessandro didn't raise his voice, but the manager materialized instantly. "Grace is finished for the evening. Pay her for the full shift and tomorrow's as well." "Of course, Mr. Valentino. Right away." "Wait," Grace protested. "I can't." "Yes, you can. And you will." Alessandro's voice was firm but not unkind. "That man might be waiting outside. I'm going to make sure you get home safely." His eyes held hers. "Unless you prefer I didn't." Grace looked at the door Marcus had disappeared through. Looked at this dangerous, beautiful stranger who'd intervened when no one else had. Every instinct screamed that Alessandro Valentino was dangerous, maybe even more dangerous than Marcus. But in an entirely different way. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you." Something fierce flashed in his eyes. "Get your things. I'll wait." 5 minutes later, Grace found herself in the passenger seat of a black Maserati, the leather interior still warm from the heated seats. Alessandro drove with easy confidence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift between them. The city light streaked past the windows. "Where do you live?" he asked. "Queens." I can give you the address, I know you live in Queens. At her startled look, he continued, I asked Giuseppe when I first noticed you. 3 weeks ago. Grace's breath caught. You've been watching me? Yes. No apology. No explanation. Just simple truth. From the moment you walked past my table that first night, something inside me shifted. I couldn't explain it. Still can't. I only know that keeping you safe has become as necessary as breathing. The intensity in his voice made her chest tight. That's insane. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. He glanced at her, his profile sharp in the dashboard light. Starting with making sure that bastard never touches you again. Alessandro, tell me the truth, Grace. Has he hit you before? She looked out the window at the passing streets. The familiar buildings of her neighborhood coming into view. She should lie. Should protect her pride. But something about Alessandro's presence made lying feel impossible. Yes, she whispered. For 2 years. I finally left 6 months ago. Drove across the country. I thought I'd escaped. I thought, her voice broke. Alessandro's hand found hers in the darkness, his fingers lacing through hers with surprising gentleness. His touch was warm, solid, real. He won't bother you again, Alessandro said quietly. Absolute certainty in every word. I promise you that. Grace looked at their joined hands. At this dangerous man who'd appeared in her life like a storm. She knew she should pull away. Knew this was the beginning of something she couldn't control. But she held on anyway, letting the warmth of his touch chase away the cold fear Marcus had left behind. When they reached her building, a rundown walk-up in a questionable neighborhood, Alessandro studied it with an expression she couldn't read. This is where you live? It's what I can afford. She heard the defensiveness in her voice. Not all of us own half of Manhattan. His lips quirked. No. But all of you deserve to feel safe in your own home. He turned to face her fully. Let me walk you up. That's not necessary, Grace. His hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face toward him. His touch was electric. Please. For my peace of mind. The vulnerability in those words undid her. Okay. They climbed the 4 flights of stairs in silence, Alessandro's presence solid and reassuring behind her. Grace fumbled with her keys at her door, hyper-aware of how close he stood. How good he smelled. How her body responded to his proximity in ways that terrified her. Thank you, she said, turning to face him in the narrow hallway. For everything. For intervening. For the ride. Don't thank me for protecting you. His eyes were intense in the dim light. That's not something you owe gratitude for. That's just what should happen. God, he was beautiful. Standing in her shabby hallway looking like sin and salvation wrapped in an expensive suit. Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. I should go inside, she whispered, but she didn't move. You should. He didn't move either. But before you do, I need you to understand something. He stepped closer, and Grace's back pressed against her door. He wasn't touching her, but she could feel the heat radiating from his body. From the moment I saw you, Bella, something inside me claimed you. Mine, it said. And I've never been good at denying myself what I want. That's crazy, Grace breathed. We barely know each other. Then know me. His eyes burned into hers. Let me prove I'm worth the risk. Let me show you that not all men are like him. That's some of us. He paused, vulnerability flickering across his features. Some of us would burn down this entire city to keep you safe. The words should have scared her. Should have sent her running. But all Grace felt was drawn, pulled toward this dangerous, impossible man like gravity she couldn't resist. I'm scared, she admitted. Of Marcus. Of you. Of how you make me feel. Good. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I terrify myself too, Bella. This, he gestured between them. This is not who I am. I don't chase women. I don't rearrange my schedule to watch someone work. I don't intervene in public conflicts. His hand lifted, fingers tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But with you, I can't seem to stop myself. Grace's breath hitched. What are you saying? I'm saying that you've become mine, Grace. Whether you know it yet or not. And I protect what's mine. His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and heat pooled low in her stomach. Say yes. Let me keep you safe. Let me show you what it means to be cherished instead of controlled. Every rational thought screamed that this was insane. Reckless. Dangerous. But standing in the hallway with his hand on her face and his eyes promising things she'd never dared want, Grace felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Yes, she whispered. God help me, Alessandro. Yes. His smile was fierce and triumphant. Brava, Bella. Then, softer, I won't let you regret this. I swear it. He leaned in, and for a heartbeat Grace thought he might kiss her. Instead, he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting with unexpected tears. Lock your door, he murmured against her skin. I'll be outside until morning. Just to be sure. Alessandro, you can't, watch me. He stepped back, already pulling out his phone. Sleep well, Bella. You're safe now. And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. Grace woke the next morning to 17 missed calls from Marcus and a text that made her blood run cold. That Italian bastard can't protect you forever. We're not done. She deleted it with shaking hands, but the fear lingered. Marcus had never known when to quit. That obsessive stubbornness was part of what made him so dangerous. When Grace arrived at work that evening, Giuseppe met her at the staff entrance with an expression she couldn't read. Mr. Valentino left instructions, he said carefully. You're to work only evening shifts from now on. Fewer hours, but he's paying the difference in wages himself. Also. Giuseppe handed her an envelope. He wanted you to have this. Inside was a new phone with a single number programmed, Alessandro. In case you need me. Grace stared at the phone, emotions warring inside her. This was too much, too fast. She should be angry about him interfering in her life. Should resent the high-handed way he'd rearranged her schedule. But all she felt was protected. Seen. Valued. The shift passed normally until her break. Grace stepped into the alley behind the restaurant for air, and a figure emerged from the shadows. She gasped before recognizing the man from last night, one of Alessandro's associates. Don't be alarmed, Miss Grace, he said politely, his accent thick. My name is Marco. Mr. Valentino asked me to ensure your safety. He's having me followed. Anger sparked through the fear. Protected, Marco corrected gently. There's a difference. Your ex-boyfriend was spotted near your apartment this afternoon. Mr. Valentino would prefer he didn't get another opportunity to touch you. Before Grace could respond, the new phone buzzed. Alessandro. Don't be angry with Marco. Marcus was at your building today. I'd prefer he didn't get another chance to hurt you. Grace stared at the message, her emotions a tangled mess. She should be furious. Should feel controlled, manipulated. But all she could think about was Marcus lurking near her home. Waiting. Watching. She typed back, you can't just rearrange my entire life. His response came immediately, come to dinner with me tonight. Let me explain in person. I work tonight. I've already arranged for your shift to be covered. A car will pick you up at 7. Please, Bella. Let me show you that my intentions are good. Grace's thumb hovered over the keyboard. Every logical part of her brain screamed this was dangerous. Too fast. Too much. But a deeper part, the part that had felt safe for the first time in years when Alessandro wrapped his hand around Marcus's wrist, wanted desperately to say yes. Okay. The car that picked her up at 7 wasn't the Maserati but a black SUV with Marco at the wheel. He drove her to an address in Tribeca, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Manhattan. The building's private elevator opened directly into a penthouse that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the city sprawling like a carpet of lights beneath them. The apartment was all clean lines and expensive taste. Modern art. Leather furniture. A kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine. And Alessandro, standing by those massive windows, turned when she entered. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a black Henley that hugged his frame in ways that made her mouth go dry. More casual but somehow even more devastating. His eyes tracked her movements with that same intense focus. "You came," he said, relief evident in his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped. But I wasn't certain." He moved toward her with that predatory grace. "Thank you for trusting me, Bella." Grace looked around the penthouse, at the wealth on casual display, at the life she'd never imagined touching. "Why me, Alessandro? You could have anyone. Why a broke waitress from Queens?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because when I looked at you, I saw someone fighting. Someone refusing to give up despite having every reason to. Someone beautiful and strong and real." He paused. "My world is full of people who want something from me, power, money, protection. But you wanted nothing. You didn't even know who I was. You just served me wine and kept your dignity despite being exhausted. And when your ex grabbed you..." His jaw clenched. "You didn't crumble. You fought. Even terrified, you fought." Grace's throat tightened. "I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Bella. It's acting despite it." His eyes burned into hers. "You're the bravest person I know. And the moment you looked at me with those defiant eyes, something inside me claimed you. Mine, it said. And I've never been good at ignoring my instincts." "That's insane," she whispered, but the words lacked conviction. "Probably." His smile was self-deprecating. "But I've never been accused of being sane. I'm a man who takes what he wants. Who protects what's his. And you, Grace?" He stepped closer, and her breath caught. "You became mine the moment I saw you. The question is whether you'll let yourself be." Her heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I don't know if I can. If I'm ready for whatever this is. Then I'll wait." His hand lifted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with devastating gentleness. "I'll prove myself worthy. Show you that I mean every word. That I'll keep you safe, respect your independence, give you space to heal." His thumb traced her jawline. "But know this, Bella, I'm not going anywhere. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine." The possessiveness should have terrified her. Should have sent her running. But all Grace felt was wanted. Cherished. Safe. "Okay," she breathed. "Show me." His smile was brilliant, transforming his face from dangerous to devastating. "With pleasure." Dinner was on his rooftop terrace, the same space where, someday, everything would come full circle. But tonight it was just the two of them, fairy lights strung overhead, the city sprawling below, and food that tasted like heaven. Alessandro asked about her life, and Grace found herself telling him everything. About growing up poor with a mother who died too young. About coming to New York with nothing but determination and fear. About Marcus and the 2 years she'd lost to his violence. About her dreams of going back to school, of building a life that mattered. And Alessandro listened. Really listened. Asked questions. Shared pieces of himself in return, not the dangerous parts, but the human ones. His love for his family. His respect for hard work. His belief that power meant nothing if you didn't use it to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "You're not what I expected," Grace admitted as they finished dessert. "What did you expect?" "Someone, colder. More ruthless." She struggled for words. "You're kind. Thoughtful. Real. I can be ruthless, Bella." His eyes held hers. "I've done things that would make you run if you knew. But with you?" His hand covered hers on the table. "With you, I only want to be gentle. To show you what you deserve. What you should have had all along." Tears pricked Grace's eyes. "Why does this feel so fast and so right at the same time?" "Because some things don't need time, Bella. They just need recognition." He stood, moving around the table to cup her face in both hands. "I recognize you. As if I've been waiting for you my entire life without knowing it." Grace stood on shaking legs, and suddenly they were so close she could feel his heartbeat. Or maybe that was hers, she couldn't tell anymore. "Kiss me," she whispered. "Please, Alessandro. Kiss me." His control snapped. His mouth claimed hers with a hunger that stole her breath, his arms wrapping around her waist to pull her flush against him. Grace gasped, and he deepened the kiss with a groan that vibrated through her chest. This wasn't like anything she'd experienced before. This was consuming. All-encompassing. Alessandro kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning, like she was precious and necessary in his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Dio," he whispered. "You're going to destroy me, Bella." "I'm just a waitress from Queens," she said shakily. "How could I possibly destroy you?" "Because I would burn down this entire city to keep you safe. And that terrifies me more than any enemy I've ever faced." Grace's hands framed his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "Then we'll be terrified together." He smiled against her lips. "Together. I like that word." "So do I." They stood wrapped in each other as the city lights twinkled below, and Grace felt something she hadn't felt in years, not just safe, but hopeful. Like maybe, just maybe, she'd found her way home. 2 years later, Grace stood in the same rooftop space where everything had changed, but now it looked different. Transformed for their engagement party. Fairy lights still sparkled, but now accompanied by flowers and champagne and soft music. She wore a designer gown that Alessandro had chosen, diamonds at her throat that he'd insisted on. But it was the ring on her finger that meant everything, a simple band of platinum with a single perfect diamond that caught the light like a promise. "Bella." Alessandro's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. 2 years together, and he still looked at her like she was his entire world. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured. "That night. When you brought me up here. When everything changed." She turned in his arms. "Do you ever regret it? How fast we moved." His smile was tender. "Not for a single second." "Do you?" Grace looked at the life they'd built together. Alessandro had kept every promise. He'd protected her. Marcus had left New York within days and never returned. He'd supported her independence. She still worked at Valentino's by choice, and had enrolled in night classes at NYU, pursuing the degree she'd always dreamed of. He'd given her freedom wrapped in safety. Space wrapped in devotion. And she'd given him something he'd never had, someone who saw past the danger to the man beneath. Someone who loved him not despite his darkness but including it. "No regrets," she whispered. "Not a single one." His kiss was soft, sweet, filled with 2 years of earned trust and infinite tomorrows. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Ti amo, Grace. More than I thought possible. I love you too. She touched his face, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd saved her in more ways than one. My protector. My partner. Mine. Always yours, Bella. He pressed his forehead to hers. In this life and every one after. As they descended to join their celebration, Marco and his crew, Giuseppe and the restaurant family, her new friends from NYU, Alessandro's relatives who'd welcomed her like blood, Grace reflected on how far she'd come. From a terrified woman hiding from her abuser to someone who'd found her strength, her voice, her place in a world she'd never imagined belonging to. All because a dangerous man had seen her. Had claimed her. Had taught her that sometimes the scariest risks led to the most beautiful rewards. And if you're wondering whether this kind of transformation is possible for you, whether you can escape your past and build something better, the answer is yes. It starts with one brave choice. One moment of saying yes to something unknown. One person who sees your worth when you've forgotten it yourself. Grace found hers in Alessandro. But your salvation might look different. A new job. A different city. A friend who refuses to let you hide. The specifics don't matter. What matters is the choice. The courage to step forward despite the fear. Because you deserve to be protected, not controlled. Cherished, not possessed. Safe, not scared. And somewhere out there, whether it's a person, a place, or a purpose, your salvation is waiting for you to be brave enough to reach for it.